Stalzone. When playing Stalzone, at times, it feels like choices don't really exist. Like everything we do, even if giving the illusion of variation, is still the same thing. Go out and shoot your gun at this thing for that reward, stay inside and use these systems for those results, wait for a certain time of day so you can do PvP, so you can gather more tools with which to win PvP. Even with how varied the items you can get are, the ways that you get them can feel like there's no real variation, like you're always beholden to anomalous serum, arms dealers, and 7 tiers of progression to work through. But that's not true, not in the most absolute of terms anyways. There are options. They're not exactly accessible or newbie friendly or easier, but they exist for all of you equipment hipsters who don't conform to patriarchal concepts like tech trees. For now, today, I'm referring to loot boxes, the crates of thematically relevant, character-locked, randomized equipment you receive for participating in the Season Pass, not to be confused with equipment crates, the boxes of randomized, tradable gear that can be bought with Season Pass currency. Do keep in mind that this isn't a catalog to help you choose what to buy right now because, chances are, plenty of these boxes aren't available anywhere at the rates you'd need to craft a piece of gear. Instead, people keep them as collector's items or sell them for insane amounts of money. Not economic at all. Instead, this is a guide to let you in to the system of seasonal drops. As of this video's release, we are in the anti-cyclone season, but if nothing interests you, maybe my predictions for the boxes that'll come out later in the year might convince you to start saving up for those hundreds of crates you'll probably need. Or, I don't know, you can fake a stroke and you can skip work. In these loot boxes, you can find a very clear, purposeful pattern in terms of the loot you can receive, and since every year is divided into 4 seasons, I have in turn divided these boxes into 4 categories. Quick Stalzone history lesson: up until the Gift of Murmur season, loot boxes used to carry a lot more loot, and you might think this is good, but it was actually a whole lot of bullshit. The Forgotten Supplies and its predecessors don't have just, useful shit that you might actually want, but they were also inflated with items that nobody gave a fuck about. The most egregious example of this being the infamous old stuff, being the first mainstream way to get the AA-12, which was, back then, also the only master tier shotgun. Everyone was running around like headless chickens to buy as many of these as possible. In my time, I must have opened like at least 10,000 of these just to gear up my characters, and I still didn't quite make it. Drop rates for the weapon schematics being absolutely fucked because they had to compete with not just your usual spare parts and purple gear, but also shit like mandarins, Alpha Mandarin, Segmented Mandarin, Fresh Mandarin, Anomalous Mandarin, Christmas beans, and chocolate ice cream. And the list goes on. Point is, if for some ungodly unlikely reason you suddenly have 100 of these boxes pictured here, you're far better off selling them in singles as collectibles, because God knows, whatever schematic you want, you are not getting it. I still have a shit ton of combat beans from that era. Though, if there's one thing you could complain about nowadays, is that crates don't drop camo as often, which is why latecomers have a hard time choosing what to wear, while people who have been playing Stalzone since 2023 seem to have more fashion styles than Kim Kardashian. Spring boxes. With the Grace of Perun as its debut, it was not the very first loot box, but rather the one that kickstarted the mainstream series that we work with nowadays. If you think the season progression system we work with nowadays is bad, Grace of Perun was like an alpha pre-test edition of Stalzone battle passes. The only way to level it up for a large chunk of its existence was by playing Arena of Slavs, which was fun for like the first 20 times, after which people had the odd habit of convulsing and drawing pentagrams with blood. Then they introduced capsules and 25 points per event completed, which was a semi-loved, semi-hated system which led to a lot of burnout and people pulling week-long Stalzone vendors in Dead City. And now we have our daily chores, which I wouldn't call better, but it's not exactly at the bottom of the list either. Back to the matter at hand, spring boxes are associated with the very early year cycle of Stalzone. This includes the Grace of Perun, Forgotten Supplies, and Strategic Reserve. Depending on how recent the crate itself is, it can include gear like the AK-47 Mutant, RPL, and my personal girl that got away, the HK-XM8S. Just look at this exotic piece of gear. Good lord. But if you want a safe bet, pattern recognition tells us that, come early year, Stalzone will fill up with FN Scars, a friendly and accessible full auto DMR with fantastically low recoil, and SBA tanks, which is something in between the Centurion and your faction's mega combat armor. The MK47 is a fairly popular AK-15 analog. It deals less damage, but in turn shoots faster and has less recoil, which is a fine trade by me. The RPL is also loved by many, as it uses the extremely light .545 caliber, has low recoil, and deals decent damage. Its low rate of fire can also be seen as another plus, since it means it's easy to control. And then there's the HK XM8, which tantalizes me with its plastic look and early 2000s future of weapons vibe. It looks like the kind of gun that they'd give a futuristic army. Come next year, I don't have much hope of seeing it again though. I also predict that, come January 2027, chances are the newest schematic added to this loot pool will be the Rambo machine gun, so come back to this video around that time to see if I got it right. Invasion boxes. I was torn between that name and lore boxes, since all of them come with advancements to the Stalzone storyline in relation to invasions. First, Civcas invaded and got defeated by the player factions. Then, the SSPP invaded, meddled with player factions, and got defeated by Murmur. Now, Typhoon is invading, meddling with player factions, and is about to enter conflict with Murmur. Anyway, the loot boxes associated to this time of year thus far are the Tactical Reserves, Gifts of Murmur, and Tactical Stockpiles. Its staple pieces of gear being the JD Civcas, MG3 machine gun, and the Macmillan sniper rifle. All of these being specialized pieces of gear that require a keen eye to know what to do with them. The JD Civcas is a healthy baseline to make a healing build, even if it's gotten nerfed. The Macmillan is one of the most damaging sniper rifles that isn't one of the big smackers, but you need to hit headshots for that to be the case. And the MG3 stands in a weird spot where some people swear by it and its extremely high rate of fire, and others call it a machine gun trying to do an SMG's work, with the later addition of the QBC Thunderbird and the ARX Beretta, respectively. The former being a slightly more beefed up A545, which shoots slower but harder, and the latter being a balanced AR more in line with guns like the KS1. Plus, it comes with an integrated grenade launcher, which can be replaced with a grip if you're so inclined. Not that grenade launchers are hard to come by, they can be easily purchased in your arms dealer, but you know, it's a nice convenience. Creepy boxes, associated with the Black Present and mysterious loot, and if you wanna count it, the Sponsor's Gift, which was a loot box released before the StarCraft X update and the Season Pass system we know today. Its staple pieces of gear have been the Carbash, SA-58, and Rigel, with the OTS Search becoming the latest addition to the lineup. It's a fairly underwhelming crate, unless you really know what to do with the gear given. The Carbash is a decent sniper rifle. It doesn't exactly excel when talking about multipliers or flat damage, but the middle ground it occupies is still not one to be scoffed at. Plus, it's really cool, in a fucky what the fuck am I looking at way. Being a bottom shooting, 2-ejector lever action rifle, I'm not even sure this one exists in real life, which makes it a fitting choice for creep season if you ask me. The SA-58 is less user-friendly than most assault rifles, but Stalzone veterans place a fairly high level of importance on it, since it can be one of the best rifles in the game, provided you got the aim for it. And the OTS Search, well, exists. It's something like an assault rifle that tried to turn into an SMG. It has the lowest TTK from up close in the AR category, but falls off at a distance, yet it still fails to compare to an SMG's TTK, so it stands in this weird spot of struggling to compete in both categories. All in all, creepy boxes are like the hipsters of the family, since even if nothing here is necessarily bad, comparatively speaking, other seasons take the spotlight in regards to the gear that you get to see. Plus, everything here has kind of a look. I don't know how to describe it, they all just seem to fit nicely together. A lot of players seemingly either ignore or just don't care for the Rigel, despite its combat capabilities. The Carbash and SA-58 are either ignored or players simply let them gather dust in their inventories. And I can't remember the last time I saw someone using the OTS Search, which is a huge shame, since, and at risk of sounding like a moron here, I see it as a gun with a lot of personality. What little ball pops we get definitely stand out in the sea of M4 and AK style rifles. This is why I urge you to take a closer look at whatever box it is that Expo comes out with this year, since even if more niche, none of the gear presented is necessarily bad, certainly not so much that it should be ignored outright. Interestingly, during last year's creepy season, which brought the Encaged game mode, the Pancor Jackhammer debuted, which is why I'd bet my money on this gun's schematics being added to the loot pool. But then, this might mean that the creepy season might dethrone Christmas season, in terms of it being the only time you can get a master tier shotgun from schematic drops. Long overdue, if you ask me. Speaking of, Christmas boxes, the last season of the year, which usually runs a couple of days into January of the next year. This usually also means the arrival of snowy textures, anomalous blizzards, the Christmas tree competition, and the zone's bloodiest conflict, the Christmas gift wars. It also means that all the lonely veteran bachelors in the zone share a single tear, for it's the time that we remember the Snow Maiden, or Snegurochka, cradling the last message we got from her before she got replaced by a gang of weirdos with blue highlights and 4-line armors. Including the old stuff and frozen loot, they carry schematics for the AA-12 and Hector, with the Antares being added last year. These boxes, historically, have been fairly simple when compared to their brethren, probably because these ones have had to wait until new content was released before they could properly fill out. Last year's addition was the Martin suit, which is why I'd bet on it re-releasing inside this year's boxes in the form of schematics, which to me might make this the cutest season in the entire game. AA-12s, Antares, Martins and Hectors suddenly flooding the game, it's an explosion of newbie-friendly gear. If only, while it would be ideal, and Christmas boxes have the distinguished privilege of thus far being the only crate that can drop schematic parts for more than one set of armor, should the Martin be added, you'd have all armor categories covered in a single box. Should this be the case, Christmas season would be the most optimal time to go insane and start grinding like crazy. That's for boxes and money, since with 3 suits, hypothetically, should you get the armor and shotgun, all you'd need is an assault rifle and your character would be set when referring to baseline gear. While the AA-12 seems to have lost its spot as the shotgun all self-respecting players have, it's still fairly decent, especially considering that after 2 years in mainstream circulation and with them being added to equipment crates, AA-12 drum mags are probably gonna be at their cheapest, historically speaking, unless one of you starts scalping, you naughty bastard of a boy. If you're one of the millions of Antares and AA-12 fans who roam around the zone, this might be a good chance to finish up that shotgun, meet a whole new bunch of friends in stocky Christmas science gear, or gear up for PvP, or just have a cool new suit to run around in. And that's it, for now at least. The more that Stalzone moves into the future, the more varied the backlog of crates will get, which makes me curious as to how Expo will keep the design on these boxes fresh. Thus far, they've all been very visually distinct from each other, they all stick to the color palette that was established by their season pass identities, and they all fit the theme of each season they were a part of fairly well. Will we see a varied tapestry of designs, colors and names, each one just as creative as Celeste? Or will they run out of ideas and come out with stuff like overgrown forgotten supplies, or satanic tactical reserves, which hey, could work. Revisiting a prior season pass under a new lens does sound kinda fun, as long as the concept isn't abused into oblivion. If you know what you're doing, schematic gear can be just as valid of an avenue to gather gear as any other, and with the help of this handsome, mediocre fella I just gave you, you should be able to plan out what you wanna save for, what you don't give a fuck about, what might come, and what has came. Or you know, you could just collect them. That way you can check them out every so often and say, wow, I've really spent the best years of my life staring at cubes on my screen. Will we see a varied tapestry of designs, colors and names, each one just as creative as Celeste? Or will we run out or will the ideas run out and or will they run out of ideas and come out with stuff like overgrown forgotten supplies?